that's the amazing thing about Yosef, because it's what's described in the parsha, this week's Torah portion, is that he was able to store grain that until it could no longer be counted, right? In other words, he prepared for these years of famine, and he prepared so much that numbers became meaningless. That's how much he was able to prepare. We look at that and think that must have taken a tremendous amount of acumen, because who knows how to do that kind of thing? Who could be that kind of an administrator, right? But It was really something else entirely. It was Hashem. It was Hashem that was with him. Okay, so Hashem could be through anyone if it's all Hashem. Everything is all Hashem, and Hashem chooses a person to be the representation of what he wants to do in that world. But why did he choose Yosef? Why? And so the idea is that he, as Torah testifies to us, he was also considered to be the perfection of purity. He was also considered to be the tzaddik, the one who rules over his own lusts. And that's how he was able to withstand the incredible temptation of his master's wife. We just started speaking about it last week, but she was really a troubled person. She had a very, very unhealthy sexual appetite, and she really did her very, very best to unhinge him completely. He was 17 years old in all the prime of his youth, with all his vitality and power. How was he able to withstand that kind of thing? And not only did he, but he did so with tremendous integrity and power. And so he exudes this kind of unbelievable purity, ironically, seeing that he was so attractive, so physical, that one would think that he could easily just become overcome really by his own physicality, really.
Yeah.
And so Chazal, our sages, tell us some unbelievable things about this whole mechanism of the preparing for the provisions for the years of famine. He saw it all coming and he planned for it, and he alone had this ability to save all of Mitzrayim and all of the world, and of course all of his family, from starvation by storing the bread, and no one else could store it. And he, that was by dint of this attribute of his purity. So the Chazal tell us that when Egyptians tried to store their own bread, it all rotted away. It all rotted away in their homes and on their tables. It was all like Yosef was a magnet because he exuded purity, so he was able to keep it all together. And no one else, and just this one more thing, that's also connected to the fact that it's a strange kind of idea that, and it's not so well known, a lot of people are not aware of it, that Yosef had another requirement, and that was that everyone circumcised themselves before they come to bed. And it wasn't like the story of Shechem. He wasn't doing any kind of number here. He didn't do it. Just, and after they healed, they all came. And then they were able to eat the bread, because that was really what this was all about. It was, and that's why the famine came, and that's why Egypt was going under, because it was so totally sunk in this horrific licentiousness. And Yosef, like a beam of light, was able to elevate that gross physicality, that the klipa of that kind of like terrible abandonment to lust. He was able to save them through his own purity, despite the fact, or because of the fact that he was so beautiful. But again, that's part of the whole Mashiach ben Yosef thing. The Mashiach ben Yosef thing is a physical device, a physical force that is able to sanctify materialism by injecting Hashem's presence into it, and by elevating the material and creating the infrastructure and the logistics that are necessary to support the spiritual revolution. And then onto that scene of the infrastructure that was created by Yosef, or by the Yosefian force in history, then enter Mashiach ben David, who is able to uplift the spiritual. But first you have to have a purification of the physical.
This is so amazing, because this is exactly the point that I was going to make, is that again is the connection to Chanukah, is the idea that the Greeks wanted to stop, or they in fact they tried to stop the Jewish people from circumcising their sons. And this is the connection to the idea that they wanted them to give in to the licentiousness, because that's what the circumcision, that's what the brit is all about, is being reminded of the purity of the vessel that God created to bring.
It's a sign on the body, that's what I always say. It's not on the elbow,
right,
and it's not on the edge of the nose, because we are making a statement that the area of human endeavor that could become the very seat of the unraveling of humanity, because it has the potential to be completely selfish. Mm-hmm. We're taking that and we're saying, no, this is also an aspect of godliness that has to be treated with dignity and respect, and even purity and holiness.
Yeah, Yosef, people don't think of what he had done this way. Yosef saved the empire of Egypt. He literally saved them, not only from starvation, he saved them, as you just pointed out, from spiritual deprivation, at least for a while. And the thing is that we can see this even in the Egyptian historical record. There is a Pharaoh, and there's a stele on the lower cataracts of the Nile. We've talked about this before. And this Pharaoh, and in fact, the first two dynasties that Yosef may have been the prime minister for, the Pharaoh dreamed of 7 years of famine. And he asked his prime minister, who's called Imhotep, what can we do? He says that prime minister seeks the wisdom of the god of Egypt at that time. But what's interesting is that during that same time period of that Pharaoh, and I'm the reason I'm not calling him today, because it's either Jedkare Isesi, or there's another Pharaoh. I don't have my notes with me. Besides, I'm an old man and I forget things these days. But anyway, in this time period of this Pharaoh who had this dream of 7 years of famine and sought the counsel of his prime minister, we also find the very first bas-reliefs commemorating the circumcising of Egyptians.
Unbelievable.
It first occurred in that time period. So it's even there in the historical record of Egypt.
So that's like evidence of Yosef's imprint on history.
Of course.
Amazing.
Yeah.